But I think that many of us can identify with this auto advice giving, and especially with children. So what I say is just change it up. It doesn't mean you're never going to tell your best friend or your child your thoughts about what might be a great course of action. You will. But my point, if you get into recovery from being a high functioning codependent, is that it isn't the first thing that you say. It's not a reactive, oh, I see you're in pain. That triggers me to want to fix. We're trying to avoid that. So it requires us to tolerate how it makes us feel when the people we love are in pain, because nobody likes to be a project.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Today I have another great episode for you. And of course, it's about how to be better and have a better life and stellar life. And a stellar life starts with your inner work. So I brought Terri Cole. She's a licensed psychotherapist and global relationship and empowerment expert and the author of Boundary Boss and Too Much. For over 2 decades, Terri has worked with a diverse group of clients that includes everyone from stay-at-home moms to celebrities and Fortune 500 CEOs. She has a gift for making complex psychological concepts accessible and actionable so that clients and students achieve sustainable change. She inspires over 1 million people weekly through her blog, social media platforms, signature courses, and her popular podcast, The Terri Cole Show. Today we talked about how to set boundaries, how to have a hell yes to the things you really want to do and not do things out of obligation. And when it comes to boundary, how to set the boundary in the right way so it's not too much like a doormat or too aggressive. How to communicate better, how to take better care of yourself and nourish your body and nourish yourself and nourish your mind and heal some childhood pain and succeed in life and get out of your own way, get out of people pleasing, get out of fear of rejection, and just be the best version of yourself that you can be. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Terri. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to have a conversation with you.
Orion, I am so excited to have a conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. Before we begin, maybe you can share a little bit about yourself and your background and your passion. We already spoke a little bit before the interview, and I really felt your heart, but I want the listeners to hear it too.
I have been a psychotherapist for 27 years. I was a talent agent before that for almost a decade. I'm really passionate about helping people live the lives they deserve to live, which are good and fulfilling lives, even in a hard world, right? Even in a hard world, which is what we're living in, we can create beautiful experiences in our lives. And I feel like I'm uniquely skilled to help people get out of their own way when it comes to love, when it comes to communication, when it comes to boundaries, when it comes to codependency, because these are experiences that many of us have. And really, there was nobody to teach us how to do this stuff. So why I teach what I teach is because it's what I most need to learn. And how much my life changed when I did learn it, you know?
Yeah. So I went over your website and your blog, and it's like incredible information. And then you mentioned high functioning codependence. What is that?
Well, my latest book is about this. It's called Too Much, A Guide to Breaking the Cycle of High Functioning Codependency. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I am a recovering high functioning codependent. And in my therapy practice, what was happening is I have women very much like you, very much like me, highly capable, highly motivated, highly successful. So if I would say to them, hey, what you're describing, this is a codependent pattern, they would immediately reject the notion. They would be like, codependent? No, not me. Everyone's dependent on me. I'm making all the money. I'm making all the moves. What are you talking about, right? And so I realized that my clients didn't understand what codependency is. And then I started really like sort of diving into what is it. So what I've come up with in calling it high functioning codependency and identifying this as a pattern of behavior in hundreds, thousands of women that I've worked with over the many years is it's codependency for modern times. It's codependency for our modern time. So what is it? According to me, it's you being overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the circumstances, the situations, the finances, the careers of the people in our lives, right? To the detriment of our own internal peace, right? So we're not talking about being concerned, right? That's different. When you're a high functioning codependent, you take it one step further and you feel responsible for those things in other people's lives.
Yeah, well, I feel that a lot, especially with my son. I have a 5-year-old, and I know that I'm not supposed to be responsible for his happiness, but I'm like, oh, let me just, shield you from the world, shield you from pain, and kind of like build walls around you so you will never get hurt. And I understand that it's hard, but when you want something so much for somebody you love, it's hard not to be so, I guess, codependent. How is that a codependency?
Well, it's not your side of the street. I mean, listen, parenting is different, right? So we can talk about appropriate boundaries and interactions for parenting for sure, because it's different. When you have a 5-year-old, you have been tasked by the world and by your nature to be fully responsible. Like, we got to make sure this human lives. You know what I mean? Like all the things, and that we're feeding them well, and that they sleep, and that they're right, that their nervous system is okay. So I understand the difficulty at being a mother myself and a grandmother myself of how do we go from the world being like, here, you are fully responsible for this human, to then they get to a certain age as they get older where we're supposed to then be like, okay, good luck. That's not how it is. And that's not how we're going to do it successfully. If you're talking about parenting kids and not being codependent, one thing that you can do right now with a 5-year-old is, when your 5-year-old is in pain about something, is instead of giving solutions, you can just ask expansive questions. Oh, you had a bad day at school today? Oh, you had a fight with that other boy? So you tell me, babe, what do you think you should do tomorrow? What do you think you should do? How do you think you should handle this? And listen, maybe a 5-year-old will be like, I have no idea. But what the seeds that we're planting when we go from, as high functioning codependents, a lot of times we are auto advice givers. We can't stop ourselves from we just are dying to tell you, you could be, I was the worst offender ever. I didn't even have to know you to tell you what I thought you should do. I could overhear you on a bus and be like, oh, I have a thought, like literally, and I'm not kidding. So trust me, anybody listening to this, when I'm talking about this, there is no judgment whatsoever. But if you make one simple shift from auto advice giving, and we'll certainly talk about the traits of high functioning codependency so people listening can sort of see themselves. Yeah. But I think that many of us can identify with this auto advice giving, and especially with children. So what I say is just change it up. It doesn't mean you're never going to tell your best friend or your child your thoughts about what might be a great course of action. You will. But my point, if you get into recovery from being a high functioning codependent, is that it isn't the first thing that you say. It's not a reactive, oh, I see you're in pain. That triggers me to want to fix. We're trying to avoid that. So it requires us to tolerate how it makes us feel when the people we love are in pain, because nobody likes to be a project. And this is what happens when we're endlessly auto-fixing others. We are not relating to them in a healthy human way. We're not respecting their right to be sovereign. We are tending to our tender heart that's like, oh, I can't stand to see you in pain. So I cannot tolerate this feeling. But here's the thing, Orion, what we learn as we do this work is that you can. actually tolerate that feeling, and that it is way more loving to be with someone, right, during a dark night of the soul, in the foxhole with them, tolerating your feeling instead of trying to fix them, compassionately witnessing them, saying, I'm here. Tell me how I can best support you, rather than making assumptions about what other people should do. And when you're a high functioning codependent, because really, listen, it doesn't matter whether you're a high functioning or just a regular garden variety codependent. At the base, the foundation of this behavior is an overt or covert bid or desire to control other people's outcomes. You don't want your kid to make a mistake in school, to have a problem with someone. You don't want your best friend to marry the idiot. So you're telling her all the things that she should do instead or whatever. Like, our hearts are in the right place. And I say us because, listen, I'm in recovery, but it's still my nature to not want the people I love to be in pain. I don't want you to be in pain, and I just met you. So when we're empaths and when we're highly sensitive people, it is hard to change those things. But we don't have to change our feeling nature. All we're doing is changing our behavior. And the reason why I talk about it like being in recovery is because it's just like being in recovery. Let's say I'm in recovery for alcohol addiction, which I am. This doesn't mean I never, like, that I don't feel like having a glass of wine, right? It just means I don't have a glass of wine because I'm in recovery. This is the same thing. So when we start to identify what are the traits and behaviors of being a high-functioning codependent, and what are the things that we can change of those traits and behaviors, if those traits and behaviors are causing us pain in our life, conflict, tension. So if you're a high-functioning codependent, you might feel overly responsible for fixing other people's problems, right? You might go above and beyond, even when people have not asked you to, right? You might do things because you think they need doing rather than waiting for someone to ask you.
I'm like that with my mom, I think.
Like what? Tell me.
Like, trying to help her and guide her and protect her. And like, she's getting older. She's not very technologically savvy. She's not as, as, I don't know, doesn't have so much life force like she used to. So she needs more help. And I really sometimes have to hold myself back from actually tell her how to live her life. what's the best for her.
Right, because what you're talking about is sometimes as our parents age, what we're doing is appropriate. It's appropriate to say to my mother, if you can't do your food shopping anymore, I will help, or I'll come once a week and do whatever, right? So there's appropriate helping, and then there's inappropriate helping. And it's the same thing with kids, right? Kids come to us. We are tasked with guiding them. I mean, this is part of our mandate as parents. But there are ways to guide them and help them gain really important skills in life, like deductive reasoning and conflict resolution, and understanding that there are consequences for behavior, right? Critical thinking. All of those things, we can do that when we step back, when we feel a little more secure and we go, okay, I'm going to ask my 15-year-old how they think they should get themselves out of this jam because they failed their chemistry final or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So what are you intending to do? What do you plan to do? Even if the kid says, I don't know, you can say, okay, if you did know, what would it be? What does your gut say? Because here's the thing. What that 15-year-old thinks that they should do, even though they're not an adult yet, is important. And it's important information. Even if you go, no, you're not going to do that, right? If you ask a 7-year-old who had a fight with a kid in school yesterday, all right, so what do you think you should do tomorrow? And he says, I think I should go in and punch Billy in the face. You're not going to say, that's a good idea. I think you should. Most likely, right? But what is happening when we ask expansive questions to children and to adults and to parents, what we're doing is we are deepening the intimacy in those relationships instead of endlessly trying to control them.
What if they give you the wrong answer? Or you're like, what should you do with that bully? Oh, I should just be quiet and play with him more so maybe he will like me. And I'm like, don't, that's not the right answer.
You can say, okay, so what makes you think that's the way to go, right? So you want him to like you. Well, what about this? I have a thought about that. I think it would be good if he respected you. So what do you think the behavior would be to get him to respect you? Let's talk about that. Because liking is one thing, but you know what, babe? Respecting, that's actually more important in life than people liking you. Because first of all, we don't even know if you like him. And it feels like if we think he's a bully, you probably don't like him that much. And that's okay. But whether someone likes you or doesn't like you, them respecting you is important the same way you should respect other people. So let's look at it from that lens. Like, even if you're talking to a 7-year-old, the truth is you could have that conversation without shaming them. And then now you have this information. The 7-year-old has now revealed to you that they're a bit of a people pleaser and that they're afraid. And that's okay. Right now you have something to work with as a parent. So it's very much win-win. Even if they give you, quote unquote, the wrong answer, right? If the kid says, I'm going to go beat him up tomorrow, we're not thinking that's the right answer either, probably, right? You want to teach them to use their words and whatever. But when you think about this in your adult relationships as well, auto advice giving, auto accommodating, right? Where we will self-sacrifice so that other people get their needs met. That is something, and auto accommodating can happen anywhere, right? You can do it right out in public. I tell a story in the book of being at a hair salon in New York City on a really busy Saturday. And they have like a mask on my hair. So I'm just laying in the sink, not doing anything because you got to wait for 20 minutes. But now suddenly the sink line is backing up and I'm laying there feeling like a jerk because they're not doing anything to my hair. I'm just laying there taking up a sink. And I'm every next person that stands in line, I'm more and more stressed out. So I finally call over the assistant and I'm like, I could move. And she's like, yeah, lady, we got it. Don't worry. We do this every Saturday, And that's a perfect example of me trying to take responsibility for something that's not on my side of the street. I could have been listening to a podcast, resting my exhausted brain. I could have been doing a lot of other things, but instead I was getting anxious and taking responsibility for a situation that wasn't mine at all. And I realized if I do this, other people do this for sure. And then I went and made a video of it and I put it on YouTube and it went viral. People were like, oh my God, I do this everywhere. I can never relax. I'm always dialed into my direct surroundings. And that is another quality of being a high-functioning codependent, because we can become codependently attached to people in our lives or anywhere. Even if you don't know people, you can feel responsible for them. They want to sit together. Should you move? Should you, right? Like we're very caring. If you're a high-functioning codependent, you're also probably a caring person, and there's a tendency to overfunction, which is doing more than our share. In our relationships, at work, in family situations where you're the one everybody counts on. But there's a cost for doing that. And I think that it's important that we're able to sort of look at what are we doing, and we can certainly talk about why are we doing it, but then what is the cost of doing it?
Right. I feel like the big why for people pleasing or being so hyper vigilant and scanning our surroundings, taking care of everyone, which is something I understand very well. It really reminds me of someone I know very well. And it probably stems from some childhood traumas or childhood beliefs that are unsolved. And of course, the cost is our sanity and freedom and health. So how do we break out of that? Like, do we go back to do inner child work and how many times can we do inner child work and whatever methodologies are out there until we finally solve it? Is it ever solvable?
Well, here's the thing. It's recoverable, right? So I don't think you'll ever be cured. No, because this is part of your nature. Part of my nature is being very caring. I'm an empath. I'm a highly sensitive person. So we can learn, though, to take better care of our energy. We can learn to stay on our own side of the street. We can learn what we're actually responsible for and not responsible for, and our relationships will be better for it. Yes, back to the scene of the crime, which is childhood. But here's the thing. No matter where you were raised, I have had clients from all over the world and people from every kind of situation that you can imagine. And I don't think, I very rarely in almost 30 years of doing this, have I ever met a woman who did not fall into the category of being a high functioning codependent in some way, meaning feeling overly responsible for other people, for the other people's happiness in life, for other people's accomplishments, right? It's like, this is so common. And this happens with women who did not have trauma backgrounds. So what I'm saying is that you don't have to have, you could have come from a quote unquote pretty normal family, not growing up in a war-torn country, and still have this tendency, because we all have been raised in a patriarchal system, that the roles assigned to women, what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to be agreeable, be compliant, make sure everyone else is okay, give anybody the shirt off your back, right? The more self-sacrificing, the better. And this is messaging in every fucking culture, worse in some, better in others. But besides some indigenous tribes in some places where women are sort of running the show there, most of us have had this experience. And so there's a lot of unlearning we need to do. And why should we care about doing this work? Well, because if we don't do it, we end up martyred, resentful, burnt out, have autoimmune disorders. We end up living what I call life light, L-I-T-E, because we're always in our heads worrying about, thinking about, anticipating problems. The hypervigilance that you spoke of before, Orion, is something that is so real in so many women's daily life that we're not experiencing this present moment in the same impactful way if we are living so much in our heads and trying to control everything and anticipate needs and make sure nobody has a problem and make sure everything gets done and all the things that we're always doing as women. So life is only about half as sweet or half as impactful for us as it should be. And that's a huge cost to pay. And another, like one of the worst things, because we're also hyper independent, right? Where we're not that great at asking for help. We're not that great at allowing other people to do things for us, at least many of the high functioning codependents that I've worked with, and myself too. I was the worst. I couldn't even let the cab driver lift my huge bag, and he'd be getting out. I'm like, I got it. Don't worry about it. Like, why? I'm not letting the kid at the grocery bag I'm just like, go help someone else. I'll do it. Why? Well, partly because I don't want to be a burden. Partly because, and from talking to thousands of women over the last 10 years about this, women don't want to owe someone, right? I don't want to feel like I owe you something when I'm at the end of this, which, this breeds codependency as opposed to interdependency, right? Where I depend on you and you depend on me. When we're codependent, we're not depending on other people,
Yes. So I had to do a big work on myself, this whole journey into my feminine and allowing my man to open the door and allow people do things for me. And it felt fake at first, but I got it. Like now I'm like, yeah, of course. Hold this for me. Open the door. Yeah, why not? Like, queen, hello. Please do this. and allow other people to do something for me, and let go of that control or the need to be a martyr in some way. I like that word. There is some glory to it. It's being the I always survive. I always have this story of survival, and I did it. I did it my way. All that. So I'm in the process, like in the last few years, of learning boundaries, letting go and letting God. And I love what you said, and I actually say it to my son a lot. What do you think? What do you think? And I also like the other sentence. If you did know, what would it be? Like, I don't know. If you did know, I don't know.
Because it's funny, that intervention, that's like a therapeutic intervention, that it can really help people get to their answers. Because you're like, you can't get it wrong. Even if you're kind of guessing, it's okay because it's your life. And even if I'm your parent, and ultimately I'll probably be the say at this, what you're saying to a child when you're asking them what they think, and then you're quiet enough to listen, is you're saying, you matter. What you think matters. And it's interesting, the way that I grew up, I had 3 older sisters. I had a pretty negligent, like absent, even though he was fiscally present, but not there, father. But my mother I was always very close and still very close to my mother, who's turning 88 this year. And from the earliest, I can remember my mother, like, I was little, probably 2, like just little. And she would bend all the way down and come right into my face and be like, do you do want to do that, or you don't want to do it? Like, she really cared. If I'd be like, oh, you don't want to wear that sweater? It's scratchy. You don't have to wear that sweater. I'll get you different. It's all right. Like, there was no, like, I was self-determined in some ways, even as a little kid. But what it did for me, even with having a father wound, having a parent who inquired about what I thought made me feel like what I thought, what I wanted, how I felt mattered and should matter to other people as well. And that was really helpful, especially with my female relationships. Of course, I had the repetition of the father wounds, so my male relationships when I was younger wasn't great. But this is something, when you get into recovery from being a high-functioning codependent, it's the gift that you are giving to the people in your life is the gift of your attention, like in a real way, not fixing, witnessing compassionately and lovingly. And that's love. Like, it requires us to be uncomfortable sometimes. And when you really love someone, you're like, okay, I'm willing to sit in this discomfort. And think about how hard that is to do. I used to not be able to do it at all. I couldn't stop myself from saying, I know exactly what you should do. I know the perfect doctor. I know the perfect therapist. I have the perfect book. I know. And what I learned through my own therapeutic process and then helping thousands of women is that what I was really doing was centering myself as the solution to everybody's problem. And it's so presumptuous right now. I think about it, it's like cringe, but I thought that was love. I thought that was devotion. And until I learned from a therapeutic process that what I was really doing, I was like, when I did learn that, even though it was painful, it felt like embarrassing and all of those things, it really inspired me to stop doing it. I was like, I love this person, which means asking them what they think, letting them talk, because here's the thing, everyone has the right to succeed or fail, to thrive or flail. But when you're an HFC, high functioning codependent, we do not like people flailing. We do not like that. We want to help all the people flailing. And I think that there's something loving about that. But we have to, when you get into recovery, as I walk you through in the book, you realize that it's not your side of the street and that everyone is on their own journey in this life, that you may not understand why they need to learn what they need to learn the way they need to learn it. But you don't have to. right? What you have to do is be willing to be there and be in the trenches with people. So how do we do this? How do we shift from sort of trying to control the people in our lives to relating to them in a loving way? Well, we have to first want to, right? That's the first thing, is we have to want to change. We have to be able to look at how we're behaving.
Awareness, intention.
Exactly. That's the most powerful and the first. And then we have to have better boundaries. As you said, you've been working on your boundaries, right? Understanding what is mine to do, what is not mine to do, right? And that can be really difficult. And then we have to learn to let people live, let them do what it is that they need to do in their lives and not assume we know. And that can be really difficult. We need to be taking care of ourselves. And this is the thing, when you're a high functioning codependent, we're so busy worrying about other people. A lot of time we do a lot of self-abandonment. So another thing that I think could be helpful is, before you take on another thing, or before you say yes to another thing or another person, you run it by these two questions. So you buy time. No more auto-yesing. No more auto-yesing. We have to say to people, I'll get back to you tomorrow. I'll get back to you in 5 days, whatever it is. Like, give yourself space to decide.
Oh, that's hard for me. I'm actually working on that gap of not responding. I had to train myself to wait 24 hours before I react. It's, oh my goodness, I'm an Aries. It's hard for me. I'm like, hold it. Wait a second. Think about it. Sleep on it.
It's so good to wait, though, as you're saying, because what happens is, if we stop the auto yes, then we can go, okay, here are these two questions. One, do I have the bandwidth to do this, to say yes to this, without becoming resentful? Number two, do I even friggin' want to do it? Right? So much of the time, we don't even give ourselves permission to want what we want with all of our heart, right? We go, oh, but my friend wants me to do it. Hey, sometimes that plays in, and maybe I'll do things. A lot of times, of course, if you're in relationships, we do things because other people want us to. That's not a crime. But we really need to think about, why am I saying yes? Am I people pleasing to someone who's not even a priority in my life, right? Someone who's not even in my VIP section. Why am I people pleasing this acquaintance? I don't need to please them. And doing it, if doing it is going to make you resentful, then it's not something you want to be doing, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about an exercise that I can do or somebody else can do to stop freak about what other people think. Is, I used to host parties, and as the host of those parties, just at home with lots of friends, and I would be so caring for everyone, and is the food okay? And like, I would not enjoy my parties. I would just be there for everyone, and I just want to host a party and don't care about other people and what they feel, and just be there for myself, and just as an experiment to see how it feels like to have a party and not care about what other people think, if they had what they need, if they need anything.
But let's reframe it. Let's reframe it, Orion. Let's frame it as, have a party and have faith that the people who are at the party, if they need something, they know where it is. Because when people come in, you go, hey, the drinks are over here. The food is over here. Go to it. Have a great time. I'll mingle with you later. Like, you're setting people up to realize you're not going to be passing a plate around, making sure that they're eating whatever the food is. They're responsible. So part of it is going in sort of as a collaborative feeling of like, we're all here to make connections with each other, right? Like, you go, oh, what's important to me in this party? Connecting with the people I love, or people that I was interested in getting to know more, right? Like inviting maybe some new friends. So you get clear about, that's my priority. And I'm not going to overfunction in the way of taking responsibility for the kind of time someone has at my party, because whether they have a good or a bad time, that's their side of the street. You've provided everything possible for them to have a good time. Maybe they're PMSing. Maybe they just broke up with their partner. Maybe they have a stomach ache and they have a bad time because of any one of those things, which has nothing whatsoever to do with you. So we allow that other people are not us. I am not responsible for your time other than doing my best to provide what I think would be a nice things to have at a party. And that's a different frame, right? Where you go, I'm going to have faith that it's going to be great. And it doesn't require me to be this uber hostess. Why? So that they think of me a particular way? Hopefully these are people that you already like.
Yeah. So they will love me and think that I'm really cute and have great, like it all goes back to I want to please because I want love, because I want to feel like I belong and I'm good enough and all that good stuff. It all goes back to basic human needs that are, probably like the little child within us really wants some love, and we can give him or her that love in a different way, right?
We can. And have faith. And we need to be reassuring the children within all of us that you are worthy simply by virtue of being alive. You don't have to throw a party. You don't have to think about babies. Think about when your child was born. Were you like, what have you done for me lately, 2-year-old? Of course not, right? We don't expect them to cook us dinner or do anything.
Some days I did. Just kidding.
But you know what I mean? Like, you are that 2-year-old. I am that 2-year-old. Worthy simply because we're humans. It's our nature to be worthy of love and acceptance. And so part of that is really believing that, reassuring the child within that. And also, sometimes we just got to disappoint other people, and it has to be okay. Because if we never disappoint others, then we are definitely self-abandoning.
So you have a quiz on your website, and apparently I'm an ice queen. It's really nice. Well, queen, whatever. At least I'm a queen.
Yeah, so if people want to take the quiz, it's free. They can go to boundaryquiz.com. Super easy. 13 questions. And this will help you see how you're relating right now in your life.
Yeah, but to be honest, I had like one question where I was like, none of those answers fit me, and some of them were like, doesn't sound exactly like me, because like in your video you said that there are lots of archetypes, and we're different archetypes in different times, and I believe I do archetype work too, so I understand that. But let's say I'm a pure ice queen. What can I improve on my boundary communication?
Well, part of it is if you're an ice queen, that means that you are more likely to sort of shut down than to tell someone that they've hurt your feelings or that you don't like what they did. So what you can do is you can learn to talk true, as I like to say, right? You can learn to slowly but surely, and start with less important people, and then we move up to the higher important people, telling the truth about how you feel. About whatever it is. So let's just say, even if it's something as simple as you ordered a salad at lunch and then they gave you a sandwich. Instead of just eating whatever they brought you, like, it's not a big deal, it's fine. Just send back the salad. Get what you want. Prioritize how you feel.
No, that's what I did today. Like I sat with my little one, we had sushi, and they got him the wrong one, and I sent it back. So I do communicate my needs. But I also understood that, yes, sometimes I rather shut down than just deal with people. Because it's a lot of energy to start getting into the, you did this, you did that. I'm just like, oh, whatever. I'm just going to slowly disappear into the ether.
Right. But here's the thing on that you did. That's not how we're approaching people. So if you look at scripts that I provide for you in the book, we're always coming from the point of view of I, which is, I'd like to make a simple request that if you tell me you're going to be home at 7 and you're not going to be home until 7:30, that you let me know so that I'm not waiting. It's always about us. And I don't mean it like, oh, it's always about us in a narcissistic way. I mean, if we're looking at boundaries and it's not control, because I think that a lot of times people will say something as a boundary, but it's not. Like they're confused, right? I had someone who said, well, my boyfriend said this is a boundary, but that like when I'm out with my friends, I have to talk to him or text him every hour. And I'm like, no, see, that's not a boundary. That's just a jealous boyfriend trying to control you. So they're different things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's the way we speak. I would like this. This would just make requests instead of you did this, you did that, and then you just go into blame and shame and pain, basically.
Exactly. And when we say, I'd like to make a simple request, we're asking for what we want, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
giving them all the information they need to get it right. Now, will they care? I don't know. We're going to see. Will you maybe have to make that request more than once? You might. And that's okay because we've been doing a lot of these, especially if it's like your family and stuff, the people that you've been.
It's patterns, yes. It's old patterns. They are like stuck in a pattern. It's hard to break people's patterns.
When you think about who, I always think about relationships as dances because, I do this and you do that. It is a dance. But you think about our family of origin in particular, they're the people we've been dancing with the longest. So it's going to take a minute for them to catch on to the new steps, So we got to be willing to hold our boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. I want to ask you about the fear of rejection. What are some practical tips, action steps that we can take to deal with that?
I think we have to have a deeper understanding of why is it so scary. So in one respect, as human beings, right, you think about it, we have a need to be in community from a biological, physiological point of view, right? Think about cave people days. If you got kicked out of your tribe, you would definitely die, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that none of us love rejection. Like this is just a human thing that it can be scary. It feels bad. So we don't like it, but we need to really look at the fear because I promise you, the fear, when we have this amplified fear of rejection, it is a child's fear. It is not our grown-up fear, right? Because our grown-up self has been through it. Our grown-up self is like, yeah, I'm going to be fine regardless. Like, I'm going to be okay. When we start to think that if this person we just started dating rejects us, it's like the worst thing that's ever going to happen, that amplified fear is a child's fear. And so we really do need to tend to the child within. And we can also ask ourselves, I have these 3 questions that I give clients to ask themselves to see if they might be having a transference in that situation. So the questions are, who does this person remind me of? Where have I felt like this before? And how or why is this behavioral dynamic, right? The way you're interacting, how is that familiar? And a lot of times this can reveal childhood wounds that need our attention, childhood situations that have gotten frozen in time. So let's say you're dating, maybe the woman who in my practice who was having such a fear of this guy that she started dating, rejecting her. And then, she asked the question, I said, who does he remind you of? And he reminded her of her father, who is very punitive, like a very judgmental parent. Okay, so this makes sense. It's not the grown-up you who's afraid that this guy who you've known literally for 2 weeks, that's not what we're talking about, right? The fear is the childhood fear. So now we go back and look at what was your relationship to rejection with this punitive parent. Let's talk about that because that is where you're stuck. Because it's not about this guy you've known for 2 weeks. When we have big feelings about people we barely know, we're like, okay, that can't be about them because I don't love you. I don't even fucking know you. So I know that this is kicking up. Like what does it mean when we're having a transference? It means that we're having an experience in current time that is being driven by and influenced by a similar experience from the past that is unresolved. So as much as, we're all like, oh, do I gotta keep talking about childhood? I'm like, listen, you kind of do. But we can be specific about what we're talking about, right? It doesn't have to be all the same things. So that can be a helpful way. If you ask those, I call them the 3 cues for clarity. If you want to try to understand why you're having a big response to something that maybe, if you really look at it, you're like, wow, my reaction was way bigger than what that thing was.
That's amazing. But can you do it in the moment, or you always have to go back and self-reflect? What if you don't want to feel it in the moment?
Then don't. But I think that, because here's the thing, you don't want to feel it, then you can do what's coming to you, which is either fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? If we feel threatened in that way, we're going to either have an amplified screaming match about it. We're going to freeze and say nothing and sort of be like choked right here, where you're just like, ooh, and you're scared. So you're not doing anything. We're going to change the subject and say how great the person is if we're going to fawn, right? There's all of these different reactions. But what happens is when you start identifying where this is happening for you, because here's the thing, it'll be repeated. It's not going to be a one-time thing. So when something needs our attention, a childhood something, we're going to repeatedly find ourselves having an amplified response to something that is similar, right? Think about, who do you like? Who do you not like? Like, what do you react to? What are the things in the world that bother you? All of us have our own triggers, right? Our own things that make us activatable because of what we've experienced in our young lives. I mean, this is just what it is. So it's important that we intentionally go through and go, okay, this is a trigger for me. Let me try to go to that original injury and have a deeper understanding about it, journal about it, get into therapy about it, talk to a friend about it. This will help you be less triggerable, so to speak.
That's a good advice. How do you create more self-love and self-acceptance and joy in your own personal life?
Me personally, you mean? Or for people?
For you, yeah. How do you do it?
Okay. Well, the truth is, it'll be the same. My advice would be what I do, which is that I value self-consideration. So before I agree to do things, before I commit myself to things, the way I schedule my life is I really think about, is this something I want to do? Is this something someone else is pressuring me to do? Like, self-consideration means I'm really thinking about myself first, right? And it doesn't mean I won't sacrifice for my 88-year-old mother or my husband of 27 years or whomever, right? Obviously, we have long relationships. It means we sacrifice or we compromise. But I hold myself in high esteem, and I work hard to take extremely good care of my nervous system. I meditate every day. I exercise every day. I have animals. I have geese. I have chickens. I live on a farm. I have a dog. I do.
Oh my goodness, beautiful.
So I'm in love with nature. I spend a lot of time in nature, whether right now we have 10 inches of snow. So whether I'm snowshoeing, which I was doing before this, whether I am hiking in the woods, I don't do anything online before 11 a.m. I meditate with my husband. We play with the dog. We have our coffee. We talk about our day, what we're going to do. I jump on my trampoline or hike or whatever I'm going to do for exercise. So for me, this is self-consideration, which I didn't always do that. I was a workaholic for decades. So trust me, this is new behavior in the last 10 years of having self-consideration and really, really getting that for me to be my best self with the people I love and with my friends. I've had the same friends since I'm 60, and I've had the same friends since I was 4, right? Like, so I spend time with my girlfriends. I go away with them annually. I value relationships above probably everything else, but my relationship to myself is the most important relationship in my life.
Wow. That's very inspiring. I used to have we used to live on a lake, and we had all those animals and wild ducks and geese. It was really cool. It's beautiful. You talked about before we started about, I asked you, why did you light that candle behind you? And you said, because I love it, because I like everything that sparkles, and I love my environment, and I love, this is like, I guess, just another level of this beautiful self-care that you're talking about. Yeah. And I'm sure it was a process. You didn't wake up one day and was like, I'm going to live on the farm and light candles. And
It was definitely a process. But the thing is, when you look at your environment, right, especially as an empath and a highly sensitive person, there's so much that we can do in our daily lives to make our lives more comfortable. It doesn't matter if other people don't understand. Like, my husband has been with me so many years. Of course, he understands that I need things a certain way, and I'm willing to do the work to make them that way. I like things to be quiet. I want things to smell good. I want my bed to be very soft and comfortable. I need my house to be clean. All of these things.
very sensual.
Very. And
Yes.
very, all of your senses, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're an empath and when you're a highly sensitive person, you have to take them into consideration. I take care of my energy. I do energy work. I zip up my energy. I take these detoxifying baths. I do a whole bunch of things so that I can hold on to as much of my bandwidth as possible, because life and this hard world is really trying to take my bandwidth away, and I'm trying to hold on to it.
That's beautiful. And you're doing amazing. Thank you so much. Before we say goodbye for now, 2 questions. One is, where can people find you? And what are your 3 top tips to living a stellar life?
Okay. You can find, well, I actually have a gift for you guys. So you can go to terricole.com/HFC, which for high functioning codependent. And there's an HFC toolkit there. So just some free things to make it easier for you guys to get on this path if you want to get on this path. You can also take the quiz at boundaryquiz.com. Again, it's free, but I think that you guys will love it. You can find me at my website, terricole.com, but I hang out mostly on Instagram. I also have a huge YouTube channel with 650 free videos. I have a podcast I've had for almost 10 years, The Terri Cole Show, which you guys can find anywhere that you listen to podcasts. So for anyone who's feeling like, I really need support, but I don't have the money to get into therapy, or I really need support, but I don't know where to start, go to any of those resources and I promise you, I've had people from all over the world say, I wanted to get into therapy. I had no money, but I literally went through your YouTube channel for the past 2 years, and I am so much healthier and so much better. So no matter where you are in life, there is something that you can do that doesn't cost you a dime. And sure, buy my book, hfcbook.com. It's an amazing book. But what I'm saying is, let's say you can't buy my book. There's so much free material that I put out there because I want to even the playing field because I feel like everyone has a right to have good mental health. And I want to be a part of that. I am a part of that solution for sure.
Amazing. And do you want to share some tips for living a stellar life?
Prioritize yourself. It's important. Prioritize sleep. It's important. And move your body to whatever degree you are able. Move your body, because that is freedom, right? Prioritizing your health, but you got to move. Jump on a trampoline like I do. Walk in the woods, move your body.
Amazing. Terri, thank you so much. This was a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for sharing your light with the world and being so open and genuine and such a bright light. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, listeners. Remember to prioritize yourself, prioritize your sleep, and move your body. And have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.